is the man in yellow? Julie's story walking, Boyd and the Infinity Ring, Fatima and the Golem, and of course Ethan, the Lake of Tears, the Bird and Hope. These are the main 5 topics of today's video because these are the main 5 topics of the latest episode of From. And I actually want to start with the man in yellow because this episode gives us a lot of information about him, but not in one big reveal. It gives us some pieces, small scenes, small reminders, small details that start connecting to everything we've already seen before. First, Harry reminds us that Miranda used to draw the man in yellow.
My wife, Miranda, she painted things she saw. One of those paintings was of a man in a yellow suit.
But this is not just a regular reminder, because when we look at Miranda's drawing, the man in yellow doesn't look exactly like the version we know now. He looks younger and his suit is very clean, almost like a different version of the same person. And that is important because maybe Miranda did not simply see the man in yellow that we are seeing now. Maybe she saw him at another point in time. Probably the man in yellow changed and probably Miranda has seen him in his first version, like when he was just a human being. He probably was one, right? At some point. And we also have this moment in the end of episode 1 when we can see that there's somebody who is playing Teen in yellow. Now this guy was obviously portraying the man in yellow when he was transformed into Sophia. He is a stunt double, and it's not very weird that a stunt double will be mentioned in the end of the episode. But why call him a Teen in yellow? Just to confuse us, the fans, just to throw some red herring? Possible, but there's also a very interesting moment in this scene when Donna is saying that there's not that many people who are wearing a canary yellow suit.
You don't see a lot of people walking around here in a canary yellow suit.
This immediately reminded me of the interview Emmanuel Iman Noizet had with John Griffin, where John Griffin was talking specifically about a canary yellow suit, and he was talking about this experience that he had with this real guy that he's just seen, and he kind of remembered these visuals and he decided to implement it in this story.
And as I was driving past, I saw this man in a canary yellow suit. He had a matching fedora, and he was just dancing and moving with such joy. Flash forward to, I think it was like 4, maybe 5 years later. I'm driving up Cahuenga Pass, and I see the same man in the same yellow suit, only now it's tattered and it's worn. And his posture is weak and defeated, and all the joy has been washed out of him. The margins of something magical, like we're in between when I had seen him first and saw him again years later. He had gone on this quest and he had somehow failed or he had lost, and I was seeing the aftermath of this like magical figure that had been defeated.
So it kind of makes me think that even though we have seen the man in yellow in his usual form during the massacre in Victor's time, that we're still gonna see somehow this younger version of him. Now, also a very interesting moment for me that Donna was the one that John Griffin decided to give this line, the canary yellow suit. Now, just to remind you, I like Donna, I'm rooting for Donna, I don't think she's one of the bad guys, but we need to remember that every character that arrived to Fromville has a backstory related to hope and some kind of a life-changing decisions.
I was with someone, but it's better that he's not around anymore. Nathan was the one who saved me.
I knew all about the divorce and how this whole trip was just one last hurrah before you sat us down to break the news.
I don't know what you did before you got here, but I just sold a company for an obscene amount of money based on a quantum computing algorithm with a potential.
I took that job to pay for my degree. Last month, I finally paid off my tuition. I was all set to hand in my notice, and I thought, why not stay a few extra weeks?
On the drive home, I kept thinking, we got a second chance now, you know, to do things right.
And then you saw the tree.
And then we saw the tree.
Did you buy the boat?
Matthews with the divorce, Jade selling his company, Bacta finally finishing her studies, Kenny thinking that finally his father will be better, Christy getting married with Marielle, Sarah is being saved by Nathan from some weird abusive relationship, Boyd of course going into retirement, buying a new home, getting his boat finally. Everybody has this story, everybody but Donna. So there is some suspicion about her still, and in the previous episode the creators again focused on an image on the picture of her and her sister, and this picture doesn't have a corner, and it also looks like something is being scratched out of this picture. So is this picture and Donna's past are still gonna be somehow revealed to us? I honestly don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if yes, and there is something about Donna that we still don't know.
Where's the guy who warned?
No, this is not a big find, this is just me being a little bit frustrated. We have Ellis finally being useful after so many episodes, and he's the only one who's asking the right question. Where is this guy now? The one who changed from yellow suit to something else, and everybody's just shutting him off. It's like, it doesn't really important, maybe he's dead, blah blah blah, but this is the only important question in this situation, so please try to answer it. And this is when we move to the current version of the Man in Yellow, and of course I'm talking about Sophia. She's reading some letters that are addressed to Pastor Dunn or something like this. I still think he's gonna be in place somehow, but I guess I'm gonna have to wait and see. Anyway, Sophia is having a conversation with Sarah, and then as soon as she leaves, she starts to mumble something, and this is where Sarah grabs her head and starts screaming because she's hearing the same voices again, the voices that told her to kill Toby, the voices that told her to kill Kenny's father and make it look like it was the monsters, the voices that told her to kill Ethan, and what's importantly, the voices that were laughing at Sarah and at Boyd because they brought cicadas back to town, and the voices that were laughing at Sarah and everybody else because they were trying to save Fatima, and the voices told her that it's completely useless and they're late already and it's not gonna be successful.
They want you to know that she's close. She's afraid. They were laughing. They know you won't find her in time. They want you to know you can't save her.
So the voices were taunting everybody, but they also gave them hope, right? Like, Fatima is close, you're still gonna be able maybe somehow to find her, but you're not gonna be able to do it. So they gave them hope, but they also laughed at everybody for trying to save her. And this is the usual modus operandi for this place. You give them hope and then you see them fail and you get whatever energy you get from this hope. I don't know how, but still, this place feeds on hope, as we know from Abby.
It wants you to fight. It wants you to have hope that you could actually win.
Why?
It's not your fear that feeds the forest boy. It's hope.
And then taunt them and also enjoy their suffering, because the Man in Yellow is obviously feeding more on suffering. But the most important idea for me right now, the most interesting one, is that if we remember what Sarah was saying in the end of season 2, when she was in the ruins and she was listening to the same voices, probably that, now we know this is Sophia, this is the Man in Yellow. Those voices were saying,
"It's laughing at you for bringing it back to town, for setting it free. It got so excited when it touched your arm. The music, you had to make the music stop."
Okay, how?
So they were laughing at Boyd for bringing it back, for making it free, right? It probably means the Man in Yellow, right? It's the most logical conclusion we can come out to from this conversation. And also it got very excited when it touched Kenny's arm. So this spirit, whatever it was entrapped in Martin's body, this is probably what manifested to the form of the Man in Yellow. And now it kind of makes sense why Sophia was looking at the ballerina statue in the diner in the way that she was looking at. Because, a lullaby that was playing in the music box, and what is the purpose of the lullaby usually, right? To make somebody calmer, to make them go to sleep. So whatever was inside Martin's body, this is what manifested to the Man in Yellow. And the music box, the ballerina music box, was keeping it inside of this body, keeping it asleep, keeping it, not as active as it is right now. Now it's awake for 24/7 and does whatever it wants. But before the music box was destroyed by Boyd, when he was, saving everybody, which apparently actually just released the Man in Yellow, he was active for maybe just a couple of hours a day, and mostly he was torturing Martin. So Martin was actually holding this thing inside of him. And yeah, I think this is already starting to look a lot like, a solid theory that it's based on everything that we have seen so far in the first 3.5 seasons. So who is the Man in Yellow? And I think the answer is very, very close, because once again, the voices, aka Man in Yellow, told Sarah to go to the diner and to drink some water from the pitcher and then spill the water back to the pitcher, so maybe she will be contagious and somebody else will start hearing these voices, because Sarah thought that. It's obviously not how it works, it's not biological, it's definitely mystical, mysterious, magical, call it any way you want. But she was just testing her.
It's just another test. It's why we're here.
This is what Sophia was telling to Marielle and Christy in the end of the episode. This is just a test. Just like God was testing Abraham, kill your son if you love me, and if you don't, then you don't love me, whatever it is. So the man in yellow kind of trying to play God here with Sarah. This is obviously manipulation, so he will be able, or she will be able to do with Sarah whatever she wants and send her to whatever deals she needs to do. Like, we know that she wants to tear this place apart. So probably the next mission that will be given to Sarah already will have way more consequences. But the most important part for me is that this passage of Abraham and his son and, you know, killing the goat, like we kill goats all the time here in this place. A goat was killed and she was talking about the sacrifice of the goat. So it kind of feels a lot like, you know, Sophia is taking her Bible seriously. She's not mocking it, like it felt a little bit when she was praying with Kenny and talking about Acab. It all felt like parts of bigger scheme. And here, nobody knows exactly what she's doing with Sarah and why she's talking about tests. And since she's saying that, it means that she's probably taking the Bible seriously. Like, she's just maybe interpreting this in a very bad way, let's call it like this. And once again, it brings me back to something that I've already been talking about in this channel. There is a big feeling here that Sophia somehow related to clergy of some sort. Maybe the original man in yellow, this original evil spirit that's been, you know, possessed by Martin and etc, and now is the man in yellow, and he used to be younger or whatever. Everything is eventually, in the beginning, it was some kind of a priest, some kind of a pastor, and we have Miranda's drawings of the guy with the rough collar that could possibly be an image of the pastor from the Puritans era. Once again, it's just a possibility, but we have already a lot of different hints that kind of point in the same direction. So whatever the man in yellow is right now, its history was probably somehow in the beginning connected to clergy, to church, to some kind of a religious scripts or whatever, something like of this nature. The biggest reveal, and I know I've been saying this a lot, but this episode was incredible, insane episode. We also have Julie story walking to the same period of time when Victor, you know, got out of this cellar and saw his whole town completely massacred. And this is where Julie is. We can see that the star sign magic is still intact. We can see that this is the same cars, and Julie doesn't have enough time here, but she does get a glimpse of the man in yellow eating organs from the corpses. And what he's specifically eating is somebody's liver. Look, I don't know about any monster that is supposed to eat the liver. Like, some of them do eat, but none of them is actually specifies and specializes in eating the livers. Somebody can, somebody doesn't have to. Very interesting, of course, story from Greek mythology with Prometheus giving fire to people and then Zeus punishing him with the eagle coming down while he's being chained to the whatever mountain or something like this, and the eagle is eating his liver every day, and then the liver grows back. I don't know if it's connected somehow to From, I don't see still any connection, but maybe possible. But what I do know is liver is the place where bile is created. And as we remember in season 2, when Christy was dissecting Smiley, the only liquid that she was able to find in his body was bile. Yellow liquid, man in yellow, monsters are drawn in yellow color in Miranda's drawing. If there is no connection, I'm gonna be really surprised if eventually there's gonna be absolutely no connection between those elements. So I think it's important why the man in yellow eating the liver. And it kind of feels like he was not the one to kill everybody, right? We remember the massacre in the beginning of the first season when Megan and her mother were killed. And every time we see corpses, we see that the head, the throat, most of the time they are intact, except of Father Katri, but he was not eaten. Yeah, he was just killed. Every time we find the body with no organs, it's just the stomach area. Okay, and maybe the monsters were actually killing those people because the monsters are supposedly drinking blood and eating, those horrible spoiled food, just like Fatima was eating for Smiley. But the one who is actually eating the organs, this is the man in yellow. So it kind of makes him sort of a vulture, not a predator, more of a vulture, somebody who is eating the leftovers, which makes him even more vile in my opinion. Look, if you have any more ideas about who the man in yellow is, let me know in the comments section. And by the way, I'm planning finally to make a video when I'm answering your comments. I think it's gonna be better than me just, diving into comments, actually give you the stage, because sometimes you write so many interesting comments and not everybody has YouTube channel and they can say it, so I just want to give your comments some voice. So write something interesting, and if I'm gonna like it, it's gonna be in my next video or my next video. Something during this week. And this is a very good time to switch to story walking. We already kinda started. So we have Randall and Julie reading Ethan's books in the bus. And Randall is reading The Adventures of the Grand Gulegog, and Julie is reading The Chrominacle, The Flight of Chrominacle. But what's interesting for me here is that if you remember episode 9, season 1, when Tabitha was having her prophetic dream, when she has seen, Jim being hanged out from the ceiling, and she has seen the bottle that was later found by Boyd and Sarah, and there is an ambulance toy that we know that Tabitha came back in an ambulance in season 3, there's also this book that she's holding, and I was always looking for this book, and now we have a confirmation. This is another Ethan's book. This is a real book that Ethan has, so whatever was happening in the lighthouse, I think we're gonna see it again. I think that at some point both Ethan, Julie, and Tabitha are actually gonna live a little bit right next to the lighthouse. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but once again, I'm very curious. We also see that since in episode 2, when Julie was story walking, she was grabbed by her hair by one of the monsters, she is cutting her hair, and now she looks way similar to what we have seen in the end of season 3. She still doesn't have the same scars, and she's wearing right now way lighter, way summery clothes that she was wearing in the end of season 3. So maybe she's gonna either story walk and gonna stay there longer, or it's gonna get colder again in Fromville. Now another thing is that we finally get a glimpse of the Grand Gulegog book, and we can see some kind of a weird monster with, yellow horns and yellow claws, but he looks like a friendly monster. This is probably the Gulegog himself, and his distant cousin, the elevator fixer. What's his face? Doesn't really matter, but what's interesting is that his clothes are very similar to the mechanic monsters. It's the same wardrobe, which is basically, it's what people used to wear at this period, all the mechanics, etc. And we know that monsters are somehow connected to this place because we have the lunch lady monster, which is the diner, and we have the mechanic, which is the gas station. So whatever the connection is here, I hope we're gonna get some answers about this, but it's definitely also very interesting. But the most interesting part in this book is obviously the symbol that Julie is trying to use to create a bookmark, some kind of a magical thing that will allow her to come back to the chapter that she already visited, so she'll be able to save her father. But it's not working, because maybe she's writing the symbol not in default, like she's supposed to, or maybe the symbol is the book, not necessarily has to be working for the same place. Julie is saying to Randall that her mom used to dream about this place, and it actually turned out to be real. And now we have Ethan with the Lake of Tears, and we also had Bacta with the nursery rhyme that maybe, somehow also came from this place, and, it's not the other way around. We were always thinking how the nursery rhyme from the real world actually got to this place, but maybe it's the nursery rhyme from this place actually got out to our real world. But it doesn't necessarily mean that when it gets out in the same way. It's not distorted in any shape or form. So if we look at the symbol in the Grand Gulegog book, it kind of feels like it's missing something, and if we try to complete it, it's actually becoming the infinity symbol. So maybe the way to create the bookmark actually is to use a complete infinity symbol, the one that symbolizes that the story repeats itself for all eternity until you break the curse, or at least we think that way. Now, of course, logically, we move into the infinity symbol, and of course, Boyd's fine. I mean, the last episode was over with pretty weird scene. Boyd is being grabbed by Abby's hand and nothing happens. What's even the point? Just to make scary scene? I think we're past that. This is season 4, and they are bringing us way closer to the answers, so it was supposed to mean something. So Boyd finds this infinity ring that he's been holding in a small stash. This is where he keeps some memories from Abby. We have this note that been saying like, Mr. Fish and Loaves, this is how he was called in the army, you need to bring up bread, eggs, milk, butter, whatever, and don't forget that Alice is out today, and there is this ring. No infinity symbol in the ring, or in engagement ring, I don't think it's something unusual, right? We're gonna be forever and ever, for all eternity, we're gonna be together, blah 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 blah. So yeah, nothing that important, but we do see this moment when Boyd in Colony House drops suddenly the ring from his jacket. And I was talking about this in my previous review, that maybe this ghost hand put something in his jacket when we didn't see it in the episode. And it kind of feels like this is what happened here, because when he takes the ring and he brings it back to check if this is the same ring, he is actually seeing that, yeah, this is the same one, but the one that he had vision of is disappearing, so it's kind of a ghost ring. Now we do remember that there are some artifacts in this place that kind of repeat themselves, right? The bracelet that Tabitha used to make, that Miranda used to make the same one, so maybe once again this is the same ring that is connected somehow to original story, because if you remember, Abby was having very similar dreams to Tabitha. She was also talking about, I'm just remembering this dream. So she was also dreaming about this place.
I was just thinking about this dream I had when I was a little girl.
When I was a little girl, I would have the same nightmare over and over again.
And we get a lot of glimpses of the day when Boyd had to shoot her, to kill her, so probably we get a lot more information in this season about this moment and about Abby. Of course, we discussed the tarot card theory, and there are some cards that have this infinity symbol, but right now I want to just move past that. Maybe since the ballerina was visiting Boyd, that she is also not some kind of a demon, but actually an original person that was here during the first story, and Abby is her reincarnation. There's a lot of possibilities here. Right now there's not that much evidence to actually build some solid grounded theory, but it's very interesting. Agree with me here, we have a lot of more interesting details, and the picture becomes way clearer right now in season 4 than it was before. Now let's talk about Fatima and the Golem. And obviously we know that Fatima, she's from Iran before it was overrun by religious fanatics, and they killed her father, who was a cleric at the time, and when he was telling his daughter some stories, he didn't was specifically using the only religion he knows, he was taking different stories from different religions, telling her that every story is just different path that leads you to divine. I don't know how it's connected to our story, but it kind of gave me this intuitive feeling that it's important. Anyway, we're just gonna have to remember this and see in the next episode, maybe it's gonna play out somehow. But she's actually building a golem, which is kind of comes from Jewish traditions. It's not in the Torah, it's something in rabbinic traditions, when they used to believe that by saying some words you can bring life into something. So yeah, she's building a golem, which is a creature created from clay and dirt, and it's there to protect you from monsters. And what's important for us when we're theorizing about From is that she's saying that she has a connection with Smiley. Smiley feels what she feels, and she feels what Smiley feels. And he feels right now that she is scared shitless, and she feels also that he's enjoying that. So she needs to take control of her life. She needs to do something that makes her feel brave and strong. So it kind of fills her with hope. Once again, we need more hope in this place, otherwise this place is gonna cease to exist. Apparently, because you don't feed it, so it's gonna die at some point. But you know what, at this point of time, just a couple of days ago, when somebody used to tell me that she's building a golem and golem is gonna come to life and gonna start kicking the living shit out of the monsters, I was just laughing because it sounded really far-fetched, and now we are seeing she's actually making a golem. And it looks like, maybe they actually come back to life, because as we know from the trailers, at some point the scarecrow monsters are gonna come to life from some kind of force. Something is gonna basically take them and use them as bodies, as physical bodies, and attack our heroes. So why not bring the same life into the actual golem? And now, MGM gave some money for CGI, and it's actually possible. And at this point, I wouldn't be that surprised if it's actually gonna be real. But for now, let's assume that this is just a tool of hope for her, something that will help her survive in this place. And since we're talking about hope, let's talk about the Lake of Tears. And I have a bone to pick here with Jade and Tabitha, because of this moment.
That's not real.
No, it's not.
Really? Right. Okay, so magical place that you cannot leave, because if you drive on the straight line, you're still gonna be driving in circles. That's real, right? The monsters that come out at night and tear you apart, unless you have a magical talisman that will keep them away. Real, of course real. The nightmare that you had when you were a little child about the road stones, about this very scary place. Yeah, real, of course real. Teleport tree, that you get inside and you actually teleport to a different location. Sometimes it's a lighthouse, that you get up on this lighthouse and some magical boy in white kicks you out of the lighthouse and you fall in the real world. Yeah, that's real. But you know what, the Lake of Tears? Nah, this is where we draw the line with Jade and Tabitha. This is not real. Never we're gonna believe Ethan that the Lake of Tears is somehow real. We're gonna have to prepare ourselves for the moment when he realizes this is not real. Are you fucking stupid? Just in episode 1, you had a fucking ghost in your apartment throwing books and everybody completely disregards it anymore. It's like it didn't happen. There is weird shit, magical shit happening here every day. When will you morons learn that everything is fucking real in this place? And I was like, ah, shut the fuck up and believe your son. Even though that eventually she was behaving like a normal parent, instead of telling him that this is just a dream and this is just his imagination, and he was obviously breaking everybody's heart when he was trying to talk to Jim here in this moment. It was a very sad moment. It was hard to watch. And she's acting very normal and she's telling him, let's go on a quest, let's look for the Lake of Tears, but she's simultaneously not believing that this is real. Because you're stupid.
Of thermodynamics is that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change from one form to another. And our thoughts, our memories, our souls, they're made of energy. And that energy, maybe here, that energy, I don't know, maybe it lingers.
I mean, the conversation that you had with Jade, for us, it happened like a year and something ago. But for you, chronology-wise, in this TV show, it just happened a couple of days ago when Jim was killed. It was what? Yesterday? A day before yesterday? That Jade was telling you about the first law of thermodynamics, and maybe this soul, whatever it is in this place, is actually lingers here. And she's like, when you, Ethan is telling her dad is still here, and she's like, oh, honey. And Jade also, what? Bartender Tom is not real enough for you. The spirit that comes and tell you answers and tell you where to go, this is obviously not real, right? Just like Jim is impossible. I mean, fuck those guys. So Tabitha and Ethan, they join Donna, Alice, and everybody else to the quest, to the, they're going to the settlement, to this village, to pick up some food, and maybe the lake there is actually the Lake of Tears. And Ethan wants to check and test his theory. And on the way there, they are finding a bird with a broken wing. And I just couldn't stop thinking about hope is the thing with feathers. You know, Emily Dickin's point that we are seeing all the time in the diner. Even in the scene when Bacta, finally in episode 4 we get some Bacta scenes, is talking to Sarah, we can see this poem right behind her head. It's a bit blurry, but we do know what's there, right? So hope is the thing with feather. It kind of made me think, like the Lake of Tears. And if the Lake of Tears will be able to heal this bird, this is the hope that Ethan is carrying. Like, once again, I don't know how it helps us to resolve the mysteries of this place, but it kind of feels important. This connection is a groundwork, is a basis, cornerstone, whatever you want to call it, for something that will come next. And yeah, I have a little bit of a bad feeling about Donna, because in movies and TV shows, when a character says, whatever is gonna be dangerous, I'm gonna be doing the dangerous things next time, they usually don't survive. So, you know, fingers crossed, even though I have my suspicions about Donna, I still want her to live and survive this place. But probably somebody is gonna die this season, right? They need to raise the stakes, they need to show us that now is more dangerous than it was before, so we're probably gonna lose some characters this season. Eventually they do bring the bird and they give it some waters, but nothing magical is happening, right? But once again, nothing magical healing-wise was not happening here right away in this place. But we have seen both Alice and Ethan recovering very quickly in this place after very serious injuries. I mean, Alice has been stabbed, broken, whatever is here was happening to him, and just a couple of days later he's already running and kicking and everything else. So maybe the bird is gonna actually feel better, but we're not gonna see it in later episodes because it's gonna be kept for us just like another big reveal. And everybody's distracted because somebody was able to find the scarecrow monsters, right? The one that we're gonna see in the next episode. There are many actors, there are many people who've been spoiling to us, not exactly spoiling, but they were telling us to keep tuned in episode 5. Like, this is gonna be one of the biggest episodes, this is gonna be an incredible episode, there's gonna be a lot of interesting things. So probably this is when the settlement is gonna be attacked by those scarecrow monsters. So let's, for a second, put our thinking hats and start to dissect everything that we know. So let's say the first law of thermodynamics says that the energy never is disappearing, it's just changing its form. But in this place, in Fromville, it cannot change its form in the regular way. You die and your soul moves to heaven or hell or purgatory or whatever else. Here it stays, it has to stay in this place. Where does it go? Probably goes to the Lake of Tears. It does have this vibe, the soul vibe, whatever it is. So if there are some souls, there is this energy, the living energy that goes to this lake next to the village, somehow, I don't know how, and by the way, next to the village we're seeing that there are some boats and there are 3 houses, and we know that there are 3 boats in the caves, so there is some kind of a connection, and they were probably the first settlers in this place, and this is where the story actually began, in this village. So maybe those spirits, those souls that are stored in this place can actually take a new form. They can possess a new form. They can possess, for example, the golem or the scarecrow monsters, or maybe they can switch shape to the crows or something else. But maybe once again this lake is this big source of souls. This is where the souls are. This is why it's called the Lake of Tears, because everybody who died in this place, they died from violent death. Nobody dies here, you know, in natural way. So let me know what you think about this. I'm once again not signing on this theory. I'm not saying that this is exactly what it is, but it kind of looks a lot like this to me. Like, my intuition tells me that this is the way the story is gonna unfold, but I would love to know what you think about this. And by the way, if you want more From content, I made a playlist of my videos. I have a lot of videos that are not relevant anymore, like my deep dive of episode 2 of season 1 or whatever. It's probably not that relevant anymore, but I do have those videos that kind of like big theories that just cover some interesting topics, like the boy in white, like this place being a story that came to life, like my big theory about everything. So I'm gonna put this playlist somewhere here, and you can spend some time and watch it, because it's gonna be definitely interesting for you if you haven't seen those yet. And as usual, I want to thank everybody who supports me on Patreon and on YouTube members. Your financial help is what makes this channel possible. I also have merch. You're more than welcome to check it out, and I'm gonna see you on the next one. Meanwhile, bye!